it's relationship building. And that, as you know, that stuff doesn't happen overnight. That stuff takes
Sure.
time, and we're willing to invest that time. Part of our model has always been dance with the ones you brought. And it's also like invest in those relationships and don't try to just, have 7 new customers every X amount of months or whatever the numbers you want to be. Like that's a big part of sales and growth. It's if business went up 10% in 1 year, well, if it goes up 20%, it'll be twice as good. And that's not the case
Sure.
at all. And
Sure.
so we know that, and that's what we've always tried to do.
Hello, and welcome to Swimming in the Flood, a podcast where we navigate the challenging currents of growth and change. My guest today is Tony Fonseca from Packaging and More. Packaging and More serves all types of retailers throughout southern New England: supermarkets, bakeries, delis, restaurants, food processors, and hotels, providing them a litany of green products, storage products, consumer products. Tony, thank you very much for joining us. And I want to ask you a question. Are you still tearful over Notre Dame's loss in the national championship?
I definitely hoped we won. Thank you, Trent, for that nice introduction. Of course, I wanted us to win as a proud Notre Dame alum, but I also had the best month of my life following us through the playoff. I was lucky enough to go to 3 of the 4 playoff games, including the national championship. The season started at Texas A&M in College Station. I was with my wife, who's also a Notre Dame alum, and our 2 daughters. It ended with the 4 of us sitting together in Atlanta 5 months later. I mean, you can't ask for a more magical, entertaining season than the one we just had, except obviously winning it all. But as a Patriots fan, 18-1 is the most fun I ever had. It's weird to say out loud, and I would equate this Notre Dame season to that Patriots season.
Nothing wrong with losing to a very strong Ohio State team, but it was certainly, as a Notre Dame fan myself, a very thrilling ride. Well done.
It was great. Yeah, it was enjoyable.
Can you tell me a little bit about what Packaging and More does and how they do it?
Sure. So we're just a distributor. We're just a middleman. And I think the strength of our company is knowing that we have manufacturers on one side. My brother is our co-owner. He manages those relationships. And then I manage most of our sales relationships. And so we're literally the B and the A to B to C. And we're only as good as the A and the C. So we're very choosy, I guess, is one way to put it. One of the things we're losing just in business and just in life are interpersonal human relationships. And we pride ourselves on dealing with human beings on both sides. And so my brother can pick up the phone and people answer the phone. And I have people that I can call and they answer the phone. And I think that really matters today. And I think when the shit hits the fan and somebody still picks up the phone, you can tell that you're going to work together. So I think it's relationship building. And that, as you know, that stuff doesn't happen overnight. That stuff takes time, and we're willing to invest that time. Part of our model has always been dance with the ones you brought. And it's also like invest in those relationships and don't try to just, have 7 new customers every X amount of months or whatever the numbers you want to be. Like that's a big part of sales and growth. It's if business went up 10% in 1 year, well, if it goes up 20%, it'll be twice as good. And that's not the case at all. And so we know that, and that's what we've always tried to do. I don't know if I answered your question, but I think
it does perfectly. Tony, you're on the sales side of the business. Do you find yourself spending more time on client acquisition or client satisfaction?
The latter, 100%. We have another salesman who handles most of our client acquisition, and that's by design. Mm-hmm. So the beauty of the food business is that it's always changing. And the easiest example is to say, when you went to the grocery store 10 years ago and bought a pound of coffee, it was literally a pound of coffee. Now it might be all the way down to 10 ounces or 10.4 ounces or something. And so as the retail prices change and the math changes and the portion sizes change, the best retailers and the best restaurateurs are giving you a 10-ounce burger instead of a 12-ounce burger for the same amount of money, or they're still giving you a 12-ounce burger for more money.
I certainly appreciate that in my box of Lucky Charms. It seems like it gets smaller every week, and the price does go up, so shrinkflation. Sure. Tony, you're second generation at Packaging and More, you and your brother. How is that dynamic? Your father was still working when you started there and then made a transition with you?
So, I mean, I can tell you exactly how it happened. I was coaching swimming in Colorado. My brother's younger than me, and he was going to work there for a year and then go to graduate school. And a few months in, he's like, "This is a blast. Come work with me." And so my dad flew out to Colorado, and we just kind of hammered stuff out over a weekend. And then for like 6 months, Jenny and I lived a double life where we knew we were moving back, but I wasn't going to quit the swim season until the swim season was over, which, as you know, was August 1st. And so I resigned in May, held my job until August. I took a plane ride home in August, and the next day I went to work. And my dad phased himself out over those first couple of years, and I mostly came to work with my brother. And I think all three people would tell you the same thing. It was, my mom's a breast cancer survivor, so I think my parents had to look in the mirror about mortality a little bit sooner than the average 58 to 62-year-old married couple. And so I think my dad was fine walking away, and my brother and I, the company's in its 31st year, 32nd year, something like that. But my brother and I have worked together for 20. So it's a unique family business arrangement where the second generations worked there longer than the first.
That is a unique situation. And so it must be challenging working with a younger brother, which is a sibling, and managing employees. Or how do do you have conflicts that happen? And if so, how do you resolve some of those?
I mean, to say we don't have conflicts would be silly, but to be honest, we really don't have conflicts. I have one sibling. We work together. My dad had this very clear, he gave us like one or two directives, and one was very clear. It was like, people need to know who to go to to solve this problem. Mm-hmm. And we've done a very good job of defining responsibilities, no matter what it might be. A classic example would be, we need to buy a new piece of equipment or a new distribution truck. My brother handles that 100%. He tells me what it costs. I deal with the accountant. So then I go over it with the accountant. We live in a world right now, Trent, where checks and balances is a phrase that's thrown around a lot. I'm telling you, we have them. And we say the Fonseca School of Management is very hands off. So my brother has jobs to do, and I have jobs to do. And quite frankly, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. You know, like, how many emails do you get copied on where you're like, why the hell am I even copied on this email? And there's all this technology and all these people in the world, and no one can tell you how unproductive the 50 emails are you get every day. But, you know, we try to be as productive as possible and have everyone in the company know who to go see.
You're describing, hey, stay in your lane, right?
Sure.
Be the master of what you do, and you always have, an equal partner and a brother and a family member as a resource.
Yeah, and I think the other part of this is that I don't think our wives get enough credit for just being wonderful and being supportive, and knowing that when we started working together, our wives were both working full careers, and that changed in the pandemic because we obviously had to be there to manage the business, and they had to be home with the kids based on the age of our kids, and kids were home, at home from school for months, right?
Sure.
And our wives they couldn't be more supportive, and so we definitely have the greatest partners we could have for guys that are self-employed.
Speaking of daughter, your daughter told me the other day that you weren't cool enough to be on a podcast, and nobody would be interested to listen to you. Why does you think she's right?
Lena loves zinging me. Unfortunately, I spend a lot of time at the pool with Lena these days. Fortunately and unfortunately, to be honest, because that's never how I wanted our relationship to be, just about swim.
Right.
She's great. Ambri, my 10-year-old, they're also great. You know me outside of this context, and I am a jokester. I do enjoy having a good time, and I'm glad that my kids are able to joke around with me.
She was, and by the way, she did have the confidence to talk to another adult, me, who she doesn't know as well, but to zing you right in front of you, mm-hmm. I thought was really great.
Well, we're reaching this point where my kids, both of them, at 14 and 10, the pool is one of the places they're the most comfortable. And I take a lot of pride in that. I think that's a cultural thing at our program, and we want everyone to be themselves and gain confidence at the pool, and that goes for being on the deck and zinging your dad in front of one of his friends. So.
Sure. Tony, for my audience, you, among other tasks, you're also the coach of the East Province Boys and Girls Club Tidal Waves. And last year, there was a poster put in the office that said, Tony isn't teaching us swimming, he's teaching us life. And I know you saw it, you left it up there for a few months, and maybe you can describe what that poster meant to you.
Yeah, sure. I was coached at a really high level. I got coached by Dave Hansen at Bishop Hendricken and Paul Mangili at the Attleboro Bluefish and Tim Welsh at the University of Notre Dame. And it's just swimming can be a grind, and it's just got to be about more than swimming. It's just got to be about more. And I don't have a bucket list, Trent. I don't have a list of anything I want to do. Mm-hmm. The only thing I ever knew I really wanted to do in my whole life was to swim at a place like Notre Dame, where I was a real student athlete. And that's all I ever wanted to do. And the thing that you and I have the most in common is your LaSalle experience and my Hendricken experience were probably pretty damn similar. And I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
Sure.
And it just was a great launching pad for what I needed to get out of life. Like, swimming teaches you how to compete, how to grind, how to care for each other, how teamwork really does work, and men and women working together. I mean, there's so many wonderful things about swim. Those are the first five that come to mind. Mm-hmm. Those are not just swimming skills. Those are classroom skills. Those are workplace skills. Those are adult pickup basketball skills. I mean, it just can't be about swimming.
How do you instill some of those values into your age groupers?
Organically, mostly. I'm very thoughtful about how we do practice and how we explain things, and I try to educate them and tell them why we do things a certain way. With the older kids, it's very easy. We go aerobic on Mondays and Thursdays, and if you go free on Monday, you're going IM on Thursday. On Tuesdays and Saturdays, we go fast. We call it speed nights. On Wednesday, we recover. So tonight's a recovery night. I think the kids benefit understanding why we work different energy systems. I think the kids benefit from knowing what's coming when they walk in the door every night. I wish the practice attendance on aerobic nights was as high as it was on speed nights. I mean, our main set last night was 9 broken 75s over 15 minutes. We only had time to do 7. I would give the kids as a group like an A-. It was wonderful swimming. I had 18 kids there. I had 8 on Monday. But when it's time to go fast, everybody wants to go fast. I try to tell them the why. I write practice in a way that I would want to swim it. You've swum at some of my swam. I don't know what the word is. Swam at some of my practices. Swam. You swam at some of my practices.
Suffered.
Yeah, they're not as hard as Stewart's. Okay,
they are different.
They're different, and so I encourage our coaches to write what they would want to swim. I think I've always been able to put myself in certain places. I remember what it was like to be 10 and really want to be good at basketball, but I wasn't going to be great at basketball. I can put myself in the kid's shoes a lot. When you say, to answer your question in the coolest way, we did a seminar last night for Lena's group, which are predominantly 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. Okay. And one of my friends from Notre Dame was in town, and we ran a seminar on college swimming. If you go to SwimSwam today on February 12th, there's an op-ed, and it literally is what we covered last night for our kids in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And it was about taking ownership and marketing yourself and keeping your options open and understanding roster limits. And it was for parents and kids. And I started off by telling them, you might think that you're too young to be thinking about this stuff, but I think this is the perfect time to be thinking about it, because it coincides with where you're going to go to high school. What kind of classes are you going to take? How hard are you going to push yourself? And I think those are the things that when school's going well, swim's going well. And, Tim was fond of saying the whole person steps behind the blocks. And if you just have like these 3 or 4 things as your North Star, then, you can really help the kids achieve success in a lot of different ways. And then they have tools in their toolbox to help them get through life.
It's magical to be able to be in the position you are. And I shouldn't say it that way. I should say it's an enormous amount of hard work, but it's very rewarding work to see 7th, 8th, 9th graders when they're rational, when they're thinking, when they're starting to explore their minds, and to be able to have a mentor like you that is willing to develop them and not just put them through a meat grinder. Any coach can do that, right?
Yep. Well, it's building a race car. That's what I say to Chris Lindauer, our head coach at Notre Dame, who's also a USA Olympic coach. I'm like, dude, you get to fine tune the race car. And I'm sure that's a blast. I mean, he put Chris Giuliano on the Olympic team in 3 events, by fine tuning that sports car that is Chris Giuliano. And certainly they did it together, and Chris Giuliano works his tail off too. But I'm building that race car.
Sure.
And one of the parents asked last night, like, are we doing enough? Like, is our team going to the right meets? Are we doing the right things? And I said, part of my job is to be able to articulate to potential high school and college coaches what we do and also what we don't do, like what we haven't done yet. The meat grinder part is real. I mean, there are kids across this country at Carmel and at Sandpiper that they swim 20, 30 hours a week. 30 is probably a lot, but 20 to 25.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we swim 9. And so it's like, how do you want your swimming career to end? Okay, so let's work backwards. If you're grinding when you're 12, it's not going to end great.
No, it isn't. No.
And at some point you have to grind, or maybe we just can get a 2-hour workout done in 90 minutes. I always like to think, when Bluefish, we did 3-hour Saturdays and 3-hour Sundays. And I was like, man, when we get to college, what are we going to do? Like 4 hours? And I don't know about you, but I never swam a 3-hour practice in college, not once.
No.
But I did it back to back on weekends and in high school. And it was just if I knew that I wasn't going to have to swim 3 hours in South Bend, Indiana ever, it would have been nice. But no one told me.
I like the concept of let's work your swimming career backwards, because it's less than 1/10% of swimmers will be Olympic quality.
Yeah, over 1,000 swimmers went to trials. 46 made the team. So 4% of the people that went to trials made the Olympic team.
That's right. And that's with 2 orders of magnitude of the number of kids that are swimming. So yeah, it's a small number. So from back there, do you want to swim college? I'm sure you're coaching now people that be very happy and enjoyable to make it part of their high school experience. And that's still a great experience to have. I have many friends, I know you do too, that it ended in high school, but it was fulfilling to be a part of a team and part of a unit through high school.
Certainly, absolutely, and you learn something about yourself in dual meets that you don't learn at USA meets too.
Sure.
You learn something about yourself when you have to step up on that 400 free relay to beat LaSalle or to beat Hendricken or to beat Barrington or whatever, and kids need to be able to deal with that. Swimming hasn't changed a ton from when you and I were kids. But the things that are wonderful about it are still the same.
Sure.
Like there's very limited technology, right? All these parents want their kids to work hard. All these parents want their kids off their phones. All these parents want their kids to have mentors and friends and do things outside of school. Our sport and our team at the Boys and Girls Club, we check all those boxes. We also we have a community service component for our middle school and high school kids too. That's required. So we teach swim lessons for kids in East Providence that are Boys and Girls Club members that are on free or reduced lunch, and it's just part of service. I don't have parents that come up to me and say, "Man, you're making my kid do community service. That's not cool." I mean, you have a responsibility to the people around you. Greatness is always in the agency of others, and you'd be amazed at some of our best swim instructors are some of the more introverted kids on the team, but you put them in a one-on-one setting and allow them to talk and share what they know about swimming. It's beautiful, man. It's wonderful.
I bet it is. I know it is.
Yeah.
Tony, at Notre Dame, you studied film. I'm curious. I haven't seen any of your documentaries on Netflix yet.
You never will. Choosing a major is really, really hard. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. If we go back to the beginning of this podcast, I told you the only thing I ever wanted to do was be a student athlete at a place like Notre Dame. I didn't have a thought past that. I didn't have a single thought on like what life would look like after it. And so on one level, on the biggest level, I accomplished the one thing I wanted to do, but it probably would have been helpful to have a couple goals after that. So that's how I would always answer that question. I had no idea what I actually wanted to study. I took all the high level production classes. I was the first athlete accepted into the advanced film class, which was like the second level, because the professor historically didn't think athletes had enough time to do the class. She was the first athlete I ever left in. She ever led in her class. I interviewed just like everybody else. She was smoking across from me at her desk, and she's like, "You better not let me down, kid." And I did not let her down.
Did she see the inner Spike Lee in you?
I think I just crushed my interview, Trent. She was just sitting across from me, chain smoking in her attic. We had this film loft it was called the loft or the attic, and she was like, "Don't let me down, kid." This is funny. This is like, I had no idea I'd be talking about that story today.
Well, Tony, you're absolutely crushing this interview, and I appreciate the idea about building a race car. You may be a race car. For the people that know me, I'm more like a 1992 Yugo when I'm in the water. The wheels have been falling off lately.
You're like the Block Island Ferry.
I am like not the high speed one.
No, not the high speed one.
One of the things I noticed, Tony, is you received an award of appreciation from the Boys and Girls Club, and I want to thank you too. I know you volunteer quite a bit of your time and your money and your effort and your family, and it goes very well noticed. And for that, I want to thank you. And I really want to thank you for joining us in Swimming in the Flood today. It's been wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Trent. I didn't see you at practice this morning, but maybe I'll see you tomorrow.
I was at 5:30 this morning, so I'm sorry.
Sure you were. Sure you were.
It might be tomorrow as well. Well, thank you for joining us. Folks, resilient leaders face challenging currents, and it's tough navigating. But with one tack or another, we can get there together. I want to thank Tony Fonseca today of Packaging and More for joining us. And if you enjoyed this show, please subscribe on YouTube. You can go to my website to see all of our podcasts. You can also find us on LinkedIn for audio, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any of the other dozen ones you go to. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.